Welcome to Media Melanie TV. Today I'm back to talk about Dexter Resurrection Season 1, Episode 10, Justice for All. First and foremost, my overall reaction. This season as a whole has been amazing. I never thought or expected that we could have a Dexter spinoff that would actually hit so hard, feel like a natural progression, because let's face it, New Blood was not that. And Original Sin was a whole different type of animal, right? And it's since been canceled, which I imagine is because of the success of Dexter Resurrection. And what's funny about that, it was already renewed for season 2, and then they changed course and just decided not to do it anymore. Very interesting. And speaking of Original Sin, where we got a little bit of the backstory of Brian and Dexter, we got a cameo from Brian Moser here. I've been saying all season, we do not need more ghosts. We've already got Harry, but I think in a way it worked. And the way he was saying, why are you listening to your fake dad when you've got your real blood brother here? Everything that happened in that vault this entire season was played out just the way it should have been. Now, was it a little bit convenient that Dexter just happened to get away on a boat literally called the Getaway? I kind of think so. And it's obviously also a major callback to the original Dexter and the methodology in which he disposed of his bodies down in Miami. Is he keeping the yacht? Is he going to keep disposing of bodies there? Is he going to leave New York? Because we also got a look at all of Leon's serial killer files, including the New York Ripper. We can finally put it to rest that we did not know who the New York Ripper was. In fact, it's this guy, Don, who we've never heard of or met. But that said, I did put his name into ChatGPT and asked it to generate some anagrams just to see if perhaps that was one he maybe kept the identity a little bit more secret because of how elusive the New York Ripper actually was. Now, the actual name is Don Frampt, but these are some possibilities if for some reason Leon was trying to disguise this, which maybe he wasn't, because obviously all of the other names in there were the actual names of people. So odds are that is his actual name. And no, it is not Blessing. All right, so here are the possible other names of the New York Ripper. For some reason, they are disguising it. Don Frampt, again, is the initial name. Dan Frompt, Tom Frand, Matt Frond, Dom Frant, Mort Fand, Ram Font, and Tad Fromd. Now, it's likely that none of those are going to come into play, but I thought I'd have some fun with it just because the New York Ripper has been so front and center this season. We found out that Blessing really was just there as a little bit of a red herring, obviously because many people thought he was the New York Ripper, but also just to establish that Dexter is a human and Dexter needs these connections in order to keep him going, which also makes me think that maybe he actually will be staying in New York. Although I was kind of hoping in a way we would see a little bit more Peter Dinklage moving forward, it makes sense for him to be a one-season type of arc. But they had initially teased at the beginning of the series that we can expect some of these people to be coming back in later seasons. But now, the only possibilities of that are Al and Charlie. Charlie bought the house they grew up in Amherst. I'm wondering if it's Amherst, Massachusetts. Shout out to all my friends who went to UMass. There are Amherst in other states as well. But could Charlie come back into play at some point, or is Uma's story done? We didn't get a whole lot of information about her. In fact, even in the last episode in her file, we saw, okay, she was honorably discharged, but it was more of a blackmail file that Leon was keeping tabs on all the dirty work she was doing. So that way, if she crossed him or decided she didn't want to do the job anymore, maybe if her mother passed or something, Leon would still have some information to blackmail her with. And did they intend it to be this? It's almost like in Yellow Jackets with Pit Girl. That was something they introduced in season 1, and we finally got a payoff in season 3. Did they intend for the New York Ripper to be embraced so hard by the fandom and have so many different possibilities of who it could possibly be? I mean, people were even throwing out Gigi at one point, and maybe her arm injury would come into play. But speaking of Gigi's arm injury, is it strange that both she and Charlie had this arm wound or injury on the same part of their arm? Charlie had a bandage on in this episode, and Gigi had a brace on. I had said before, maybe there's a possibility that Gigi could be Charlie's daughter, but the more I'm thinking about it, I do think that she was just there to be a love interest for Harrison. There are some definite loose ends here as well, including Elsa. Where did she go? We know the black mold came into play. She had to find somewhere else to go and stay. but like we're not gonna see her again. There's been a lot of people talking about, hey, maybe Al ended up taking her out. She was donning a ponytail at some points throughout this season. Is that still a possibility? Is she just gonna disappear into the abyss? Will she come back into play at some point? I just wasn't sure, and I guess I thought we would be seeing her again. Now, something I love about this episode, the files. These files are going to give endless content for people for Dexter to go after in many seasons, hopefully to come. This has not been renewed for season 2 yet, at least not at the time I'm recording this video. I imagine we'll get at least 3 seasons. That's kind of what's been floating out there. But I mean, maybe if they can keep up this momentum and it's received just as well for the sophomore season and it's more of a sophomore soar instead of a sophomore slump, hey, it also opens the door for a lot more big names and celebrity castings. I would imagine after this season, there's probably a lot more actors that actually do want to be a part of this franchise. So I'm interested to see who is going to play some of these killers. For instance, the New York Ripper. Who would you like to see cast? I wouldn't mind a Christian Bale, Jeffrey Dean Morgan. There are so many possible names out there. I mean, even Michael Emerson, maybe. Who knows? Before I get more into my review of Dexter Resurrection, Season 1, Episode 10, Justice for All, please be sure to go and hit that subscribe button and like this video. I'm working towards my next big milestone of 3,000 subscribers. I would love to actually get to 5,000 before the end of the year because, you know, think big, why not? Stick with me for more creepy shows coming up this fall, including It, Welcome to Derry. I'm going to be talking Only Murders in the Building, finishing up The Summer I Turned Pretty Season 3, likely doing the Talamasca. I may do a reaction to Wayward coming on Netflix, and then looking ahead, also Fallout in December, probably going to be covering that with weekly reviews. But let me just say, there are so many awesome shows on the radar for fall and winter TV before we head into 2026, which has a lot of great shows coming. So back into some highs from this episode. We had actually heard the words resurrection in this season. I believe it was the first episode in which somebody said in Dexter's coma dream, you have to go through hell in order to be resurrected. I think even Angel brought it up when he was talking about Dexter and bringing him back to life in a legal sense. So to hear Dexter close out the season and cap it off by saying this whole resurrection line, I thought was actually pretty clever. And as he said, it's actually a little bit different this time because now he has people on his side. Maybe he doesn't necessarily have to run away. I think New York has actually played quite a character in this whole season, just like Miami used to as well. I don't know that it would actually work to have him hopping from city to city. I mean, he's probably going to end up having to take a road trip here and there to start hunting these people, but New York will probably be his home base, I would imagine. But another line that Dexter gave as we closed out this episode, I thought it felt kind of meta. He said, I used to wish I could be normal, but who am I kidding? This is who I am, what I am. I'm Dexter Morgan. I'm exactly who I need to be, exactly who you want me to be. He looked straight into the camera, and this is a spoiler alert for the end of the show You, which was on Netflix. Walk away if you haven't watched it yet, but in the series finale, Joe Goldberg delivered kind of a similar type of line where he broke the fourth wall at the end there. And I think that Dexter was actually talking to us as the audience saying, I am who you need me to be because you need me to be here so you can keep on watching me. And even though we've had to suspend disbelief for so many different things in the franchise, the fact that Dexter even got resurrected in the first place and a lot of plot conveniences here in Resurrection, this was a phenomenal season of television. And honestly, I don't think they could have done any better. And what did all of you guys think? Now that we're at the end, what sort of number ranking are you going to give it? I'm thinking probably an 8.5 or 9, just because there's always room for improvement. But let's face it, there were some episodes like episode 9 that were a 10 out of 10. Episode 4 and episode 9, probably the 2 biggest standouts for me. And by the way, I'm actually doing a live stream tomorrow, which is Friday, the day after this episode airs, with my friend Kim from Mixed Bag, another YouTube channel, friend of mine channel. We're going to be discussing more reactions, what we would like to see in season 2. So be sure you join me for that as well, because I think there's still a lot to unpack here in this first season. Another high, a big payoff that a lot of you had actually called out in the comments. When we saw Dexter offering Harrison protection, I surmised, okay, probably a condom. We heard them talking about, getting it on, fooling around and whatnot. But to everybody who said that it was the M99 syringe, hats off to you. Give yourself a big pat on the back. You were absolutely right. I like that they withheld that. And just in the moment when Dexter says the word protection and Harrison takes that needle out and stabs Leon, I loved that. And it's something I didn't catch. And I like when these shows can sort of subvert our expectations a little bit. And maybe it was a little obvious. It's funny, I was actually on Teflon TV last week and I posed the question to them, and both Tony and Phil were like, no, it was just condoms, like just protection, just like they said. So we get it wrong sometimes too, but I thought that was actually really clever. I also like that we have room now in season 2 for Quinn and Masuko. We got another voicemail from Quinn on Angel's phone. Now that it's going to be out there that Angel is dead and his body just isn't going to be disposed of off the side of a yacht similar to Prater, someone's going to come and investigate. Claudette putting the hat back on Angel's body as they were wheeling him out, that just crushed me. And speaking of Claudette, one of my biggest highs from this episode, when she's leaving the gala and all of a sudden BG Staying Alive starts playing and she's like, what is happening here? I can hear her inner dialogue like, oh my God, that's my song, gotta go. And then she hops on the dance floor and starts busting a move, a little bit of Pulp Fiction callback in there as well, Uma Thurman. But watching her dance and let loose to her favorite song, which they've already planted that seed because we've had her listening to that at different times throughout the season. I also thought her and Olivo were very cute together. I don't know, neither one of them obviously had a +1 because they went together. The way that she calls out again that one sleeve is shorter than the next, I like the way that they banter. I like Wallace as a character, and I'm curious, now that Dexter has kind of got away and now that Leon is framed for this, is there a possibility that they could employ Dexter in the NYPD? Because here's the thing, in the vault, they saw the hook of the New York Ripper. Dexter was the one who told them in the first place they should be looking for this longer hook, and then they figured out it was one of these manhole things. So now the smile we saw on Claudette's face, seeing that artifact from the New York Ripper, now they can probably get DNA from it. But now I think it's also going to be a race to who can get there first between Dexter and Claudette. But at the same time, that file was left in the vault. Dexter did take some files with him, but that was not one of them. So maybe Dexter will not be hunting down the New York Ripper because of that. Maybe Claudette's going to get this real earned moment that she's been moving towards since basically her entire career. But was anybody else surprised that the New York Ripper was in fact just like a regular guy and nobody that we met? Because for me, I was thinking it has to be a season 2 plot, right? But now that Dexter doesn't know who he is, there's a little bit of a disconnect. So I'm interested to see exactly where that goes. I also just want to shout out the fact that Peter Dinklage was just a 10 out of 10. His entire performance this season, from top to bottom, every single time he delivered a line, his body language, the expressions on his face, his fanboying, there are just so many things I loved about this character. And while I am sad to see him go, it was a strong move putting him here in the first season to get us all excited. And Charlie did survive. So, I mean, we may end up seeing Charlotte Brown more here in the future, but for now, at least she's going to be on the run. I don't think she's going to be coming after Dexter. I don't think Dexter's going to be going after her, but maybe there is a possibility in future seasons they could come back together somehow, maybe work together. Maybe Dexter will hire Charlie as his security, or maybe Charlie's just out of the game and we never see her again. What do you guys think? All right, so I kind of mentioned these already, but just going over some of the lows. Everything between Harrison and Gigi. I did not need to see that. Are you kidding? The opening scene with him below the covers doing what he was doing, just like ick. And then again at the end, okay, if we're gonna have to see him and Gigi hooking up, I could have only done with seeing it just one time, and even that for me was too much. Harrison is still so young, and hey, I'm not a prude, I'm not against people like hooking up, but something about it, or maybe it's just that there's really not a lot of chemistry between these two actors. I don't know. I didn't love it. I actually kind of liked what Elsa and Harrison had a little bit more, even though she did put him in the friend zone. I don't know, they just felt a little bit more authentic. I don't think Harrison needs a love interest in the first place, but I guess they're doing it so that way he does sort of have a life outside of Dexter. So it's not just all Dexter and Harrison. He's got his job, he's got the girl, but he's also there to help his dad. He literally rescued him from the vault. I thought that was fantastic, giving this kind of Batman and Robin vibe. And Harrison knows who Dexter is. And when he was like, hey, why are you calling me from Batista's phone? I mean, I think he knew exactly why, but I'm curious to see how their relationship continues to evolve. I kind of wish that Dexter had said he loved Harrison at the end there, but instead he's like, hey, Harrison, thanks for not shooting me in the chest. And the convenience of the boat, that was another low. Well, I think it is an awesome callback to the original Dexter. I also just felt like way too convenient. He just happens to see the picture of the yacht and then decides to go and take it out, and he's able to like find the keys and everything, no problem. A little bit of suspension of disbelief there, but also, I mean, the cameras were shut off within Leon's mansion and the penthouse and everything, so he could go with the gun and go to the vault and all of that. But surely there are cameras somewhere on the pier where Dexter took the boat out. And if they're investigating Leon's whereabouts, are they going to see Dexter on the pier where that yacht is, carrying some trash bags onto it and eventually disposing of them? I think that is one way that Dexter could potentially get caught, and maybe that would propel him to have to go on the run, or it could completely go the other way. Like I said, maybe there's a chance that Dexter will actually work with the NYPD. And given the fact that Leon had all of those artifacts, and Dexter actually ended up taking his blood slides back and not even doing one for Leon because he didn't want to remember him, I thought that was something different, not expected. I liked it. Will they start thinking that maybe Leon was the Bay Harbor butcher? Or, I don't know, will they think that maybe it actually was Batista? There's going to be a lot to unpack with the whole Leon and Batista come season 2. So really going to be interested to see how all of that ends as well. And I am hoping our boy Quinn comes back up at some point, because they wouldn't have introduced him if they weren't going to bring him back in some kind of meaningful way. All right, so the loose ends. Elsa, I already mentioned that. Also the watch, which I guess is sort of a moot point right now, but I kept thinking it was going to come back into play. And then something else interesting with the files. Mia's file was still marked active. Perhaps he just has not had a chance to go and update the files and put a defunct sticker on it. And speaking of the New York Ripper file as well, I did pull some information from what we saw there. It said something about a farm and NTD. What does NTD mean? I Googled it and it looks like it has to do with some kind of like a notebook file. But if anybody else knows what sort of NTD denotes within a filing system, please drop it in the comments, because I'm sure we're all going to be picking apart any clue that we did get to the New York Ripper. But speaking of some of those files, first of all, Dexter was able to extract the code for the vault from the inmate number, which again, somebody had brought up in the comments before. So hats off to you for getting something right. I love that. But the names that we saw, we had Voss, Walker, Thorne, Sloan, Rourke, Schmidt, Pike, Morris, LaPierre, Kroll, and Kincaid. Some of the aliases, the Jaw Splitter, the Midnight Mangler. We also saw that Cooper Morris, the guy who ended up taking out Leon's parents, was in there as well, which is where the inmate number came from. Then we had the Canton Clubber, June 2019, Keith Bauer, the Yonkers Slayer, March 22, still active. Mia still says active, as I mentioned, so a little bit up in the air, but she's probably dead. Then we had Charlotte Brown's copy, which is, of course, Charlie. And then the New York Ripper file. So again, lots of room to hunt down more killers moving forward, but he also left some of the files there for the police. They just gonna all of a sudden have this like giant mass arrest of all these serial killers? That would be pretty cool too. And then we still have Dexter out there with all these other names. So lots of directions that this show can go. For me, at least, it doesn't feel like any of this was super contrived to the point where you're like, why are they even doing this in the first place? In fact, it's kind of the opposite. They've really opened a door here for lots of fun stories moving forward. I shouldn't say fun, killing isn't fun, but like Dexter Morgan said, he's exactly who we want him to be. Let's talk about some of the needle drops. There weren't quite as many as in some of the past episodes. More of it was a score of creepy music, frantic music to match the pacing of what was going on, but there were a couple of songs in there. Badoom by Scrounge. That was playing while Harrison was at gunpoint by Leon. And that badoom badoom beat just worked so well with all the action that was going on in that moment. Then Staying Alive by the Bee Gees. We've heard that one before. It's clearly our girl Claudette's song. And I really actually wouldn't mind if Claudette and Oliva got together. I think that would be really cute. So potential for a storyline where they're actually maybe dating each other or love interests moving forward. I think because we let it sit for a whole season, it won't feel rushed. And maybe we get to see the authenticity of a relationship in the works. And are we sure that they're actually not involved? Actually, I'm gonna have to go back and see if I saw a wedding ring on Oliva's finger, but I don't think so. And if he was there with Claudette, maybe they're dating undercover and they are a couple, and that's sort of why they have this kind of banter. So, not ruling them out as a couple, and I wouldn't be mad if they did get together. Well, all the cops are in the vault at the end. We had Cristo Redentor by Donald Byrd. And then at the end, it was this sax music. It was giving jazz, giving very New York as Dexter was sailing off on that yacht with the backdrop of the city, the Statue of Liberty. Again, New York played such a big role in the story. I mean, the quintessential serial killer here is named the New York Ripper. So I don't think New York is done. Obviously, that's where Harrison is. That's where Blessing is. And that's where Dexter is right now, too. Who do we think the first serial killer he's gonna take out is, though? It's gotta be Al, right? I mean, he knows where he is. It wouldn't be super crazy if he showed up there under the guise of, oh my gosh, did you hear what happened to Leon? Maybe we need to meet and talk about this and dissect it or something. And Al will be like, oh my gosh, yeah, of course, Red. Let's meet and talk about it. Assuming that nobody actually tipped him off in the first place, and that's actually what forced him to get out of town. At the same time, though, Al, if he does actually have a family and didn't just like buy that number one dad New York license plate thing, is he going to have to run away with his family and go into hiding? Because I've got to think he's going to be pretty scared about that potential information being out there. Or Dexter's going to say, hey, I took your file, therefore you don't need to worry about it. You're fine. Why don't we just meet? And then Dexter ends up taking him out anyway. Overall, I thought this episode was fantastic, a great way to cap the season. The pilot was good, the finale was good, episode 4 was good, episode 9 was good. We had a major character death this season. We ate pretty good for Dexter Resurrection season 1. Speaking of eating, Leon was going to go by that whole rule of 3 situation and just leave Dexter in the vault, as he said. 3 minutes without oxygen, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. But we know Dexter got out anyway, so it didn't really matter. I will say, for being such a bad guy, though, the amount of money that Leon raised doing the matching, they raised about $11 million, and then with his matching, $22 million. Hopefully they're still going to be able to access his bank account to actually get that money to the NYPD. And having donated all that money, is there going to be somebody at the force, maybe the commissioner, who's like, hey, maybe we shouldn't tarnish this man's name. Maybe we do need to look into this more, or potentially frame somebody else, because we also can't go without the man who's been funding so many essential things for the police force in general. I also thought when Harry said, how ironic is it going to be if you go down as the dark passenger? Harry played a big presence in this as well. I imagine we're still going to see more of Harry moving forward. Hopefully, we're not going to have a lot of the brother bro ghost here, because as much as I like Brian, the story's already been told. We already have Harry as a ghost. We just simply don't need it. We've already seen Ghost Deb as well, and we had a whole coma dream at the beginning where we saw some other past characters. I think that was a way to sort of connect New Blood and the initial Dexter to Resurrection, but we don't need to see more ghosts moving forward, please, and thank you. I think something that also struck me here were the many moments of grief that Dexter very clearly felt over Angel. He was a good man. He was a good friend. The way he touched his body and covered him up. I mean, you could tell that this death was sitting heavy with Dexter, as some of the other ones did that weren't necessarily his fault, but that he sort of played into. I'm sad Batista's gone, but I also think it was necessary, because I don't think we just could have gone on multi-seasons with the cat and mouse unless Angel had got out of town, like they said, but unfortunately he was like a dog with a bone, couldn't let it go, and basically just got himself killed. R.I.P. Angel Batista, we loved you. And back to a couple plot conveniences again. The fact that Harrison just got offered the cater waiter job in the first place, and that he just seamlessly calls up Lance and they just happen to need more cater waiters. But fortunately for him, he hit the cannabis shop ahead of time and was vaping up a storm. And that convenience worked out. So Harrison was able to divert security over to him so he could end up getting to the vault. Again, some of these minor plot conveniences really don't bother me because we do need them to move the story forward. But I will say the boat at the end was the one that I was kind of like, I don't know. I mean, maybe there could have been another way. He could have brought the body to the incinerator. But I think he was so tempted by seeing that yacht, he literally could not control himself. So, closing thoughts. Overall, this episode was a great way to cap off the season. I will say it maybe could have been a little longer. It was 46 minutes, and the last few episodes have been well under an hour. I wouldn't have minded another 15 minutes or so, or hey, maybe even a 2-hour finale and give us a little bit more here. Maybe propel us a little more into season 2 with the cliffhanger. Maybe Dexter got off the boat. He does get in the car. He opens the file and he's like, all right, Al, I'll see you soon. But overall, just the season as a whole was a really strong start to a spinoff, and not all spinoffs are this good. In fact, I just put out a review video of a loose spinoff of The Office. It's called The Paper, so check that out. But not all spinoffs do it as well as Dexter Resurrection did. I think The Paper's fine. It's entertaining. It's a decent sitcom binge watch. But Dexter Resurrection just absolutely nailed it this season. What did you guys think? Tell me your favorite episodes, your favorite characters. Are you angry about anything? Any other loose ends that maybe I didn't pick up on, or any other questions that you might have moving into the second season? What do you want to see in season 2? And remember, I'm going to be here with the live stream as well with my friend Kim. So you can also drop in live into the comments and we can talk about some of your questions live. It's going to be at 12 o'clock p.m. Pacific time on Friday, September 5th. That will be 3 o'clock on the East Coast. So if you can join, that would be awesome. I'd love to see you there in the comments. But in the meantime, please be sure to go ahead, like this video, and hit that subscribe button. As I said, I'm moving towards my next milestone of 3,000 subscribers, and if I can hit that pretty soon, I'm gonna go for the 5,000 by the end of the year, you guys, and I have all of you to thank for this. So I appreciate everybody who stuck with me for this entire Dexter Resurrection season. So many good shows coming up, and I am here for all of it. I will be back again very soon. Media Melanie, clicking off.